Do you run Kubernetes? Is your environment growing, but your builds are growing faster? Check out the gMaestro platform from Granulate. gMaestro will dynamically assess your current Kubernetes environment and recommend ways to save up to 60% on your cost. The platform works with Kubernetes in the cloud or in your data center. And best of all, it's free. Get control of your Kubernetes costs with gMaestro from Granulate. Give it a try now at granulate.io/gmaestro. That's granulate.io/gmaestro.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from our massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And this is Aaron. And by the way, if I sound a little different, I've got a cold. So hopefully this isn't too bad for y'all. And hopefully I won't be coughing too much either. Let's jump right into Cloud News of the Week. We have not one, but two reports to talk about this week, and not one, but two articles on platform engineering, which seems to be the hot thing to talk about right now. So let's dive right in. Our first one is actually from Google. The Google Cloud 2022 Accelerate State of DevOps report is out. And the link is in the show notes. Good report. And one of the things they really mentioned there as well, and they highlighted it right up front, is the report this year is much more security conscious and has security in mind. And so think of this as a State of DevOps report with a security spin on it as well. And the second report that we mentioned actually comes from the stateofdeveloperrelations.com. And they issued this report, and a couple facts in there that I found really interesting. They kind of grouped them all together, and again, link in the show notes. But there's what they call the blossoming area, where DevRel is blossoming. 62% of folks in DevRel have 5 years or less experience. And hey, you know what? That probably makes sense. And a little under half of DevRel teams that are out there are under 2 years old as well. Now, a problem that we're probably seeing, and I've seen this in Twitter threads here and there, the roles that are out there, though, tend to be very senior roles, because if they want somebody in this role, it isn't necessarily a new team. It might start as an individual contributor role and then grow into a team. So those tend to be senior roles. So while DevRel is certainly a hot career profession at the moment, it isn't necessarily entry-level friendly. And that's just one or two areas to talk about in the report. There is a lot of details on this. So if you are interested in that, and DevRel is an area you want to focus on, I would highly, highly suggest you go check this out, or if you're looking to build those kinds of teams as well. And as I mentioned, we have a couple articles on platform engineering. So moving on, Gartner actually put out a really nice post on platform engineering, kind of solidifying what I think is, I'll just say, an industry-wide common terminology around platform engineering. And the easiest way to talk about this is shared infrastructure. This isn't necessarily DevOps. This isn't necessarily developers getting involved in operations. This is an operations team that focuses on core infrastructure, automation at scale, and repeatable process, and things that are going to be shared across one or more applications, whether they are cloud native and in-house or whether they're SaaS-based, for instance. And Gartner does expect by 2026, 80% of all software engineering organizations will establish some kind of platform engineering team. Now, take that with a grain of salt, but that is definitely something that is in there. And again, interesting read, interesting article. And if I move on to our last article, it is also a platform engineering article. This one is from InfoQ, and they talk about, this is more, I would say, community-based, and what the communities have been talking about when it comes to platform engineering. Again, all focusing around this idea of shared responsibility for platform engineering. And a number of past guests from the Cloudcast are all quoted in here and give opinions on this. So again, with closing on that. Link is in the show notes, and I highly suggest everyone goes and checks that out. With that, I'm going to close out. And right after the break, we have Michael Cade talking about 90 Days of DevOps.
Buffering. How annoying. Did you know that 17 out of 20 people stop watching a video because of stalling and rebuffering? Don't let your users click away to a competitor's site. If your business lies on online media, rely on CDN77 to deliver a seamless online experience to your audience. CDN77 is one of the leading global providers of content delivery network services. They power the world's most popular websites and apps, such as Udemy, ESL Gaming, live sports TV, and social media platforms. Aside from their massive and redundant global network, you're going to love their no BS attitude and skilled team of engineers ready to help 24/7. No chatbots, no tickets bouncing around unresolved for days, just people who know your use case and can immediately help you pinpoint and fix the problems. Don't wait until your users run out of patience. Go to cdn77.com/cloudcast and ask for a free trial with no duration or traffic limits. That's cdn77.com/cloudcast. Datadog is a SaaS, cloud monitoring, and security platform that enables full-stack observability for modern infrastructure and applications at any scale, providing teams dashboarding, alerting, application performance monitoring, infrastructure monitoring, UX monitoring, security monitoring, and log management in one tightly integrated platform, plus 450 plus out-of-the-box integrations with technologies including cloud providers, databases, and web servers. Aggregate all your data into one platform for seamless correlation, enabling teams to troubleshoot and collaborate together in one place, preventing downtime and enhancing performance and reliability. Get started with a free 14-day trial by visiting datadog.com/cloudcast. That's datadog.com/cloudcast.
And we're back and have a really fascinating guest this week. It's been really nice to see this journey, and this is what we're going to talk about today. So today we have Michael Cade, community technologist for Kasten and Veeam, and we'll get into that as well. But we want to talk more about a learning in public journey that Michael went on in the beginning of 2022, which you call 90 Days of DevOps. Correct, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely that, Aaron. And happy to be here.
Yeah. So, like I said, we've known each other a long time, but for those out there that aren't familiar, give everyone a quick introduction, please.
Yeah, sure. I'm Michael Cade. I'm a senior technologist at the moment at Kasten by Veeam, and I've been here for well over 7 years. I think you stopped counting after 7, right? But my focus for at least the last 15 years has always been around storage virtualization, and then I moved into the backup space. Always had that worry, I guess, is had that thread in me around looking after data, or more importantly, what can I do with that data? How can I use it? So very much focused on Veeam backup replication and everything that we've been doing over the last 10 years there. And then got the opportunity at the beginning of 2021 to go and focus on an acquisition that we made around Kasten, which is focused on Kubernetes backup, which is obviously a little bit of a different persona that I'm speaking to, but really it's just the same compute, memory and storage, or compute storage and networking under the hood is probably a naive way of putting it. But yeah, so I jumped at the chance, and here we are talking about new stuff.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about that before we go into the 90 Days of DevOps. I would say more successfully than some, you've made this transition from infrastructure technologist to being more in DevOps in the cloud native space. And like I said, we've known each other since the virtualization and vExpert days. And there's been a number of folks in those original communities that, have gone on to work at the big public clouds, or maybe they've moved into serverless, or like yourself, moving into Kubernetes and the resilience and recovery space, if you will. But how did that come about? Because for everyone that has done it, there's a number of folks that are looking to do it. So tell everyone a little bit about that journey, first of all.
So I'm extremely lucky in a way that obviously we acquired, and I was part of that M&A research and the acquisition of Kasten to strengthen our strategy around protecting new workloads, new platforms. And that was what drew my attention to it to begin with. But I think you can rewind on that is just being a technologist, and that's whether you're a hobbyist technologist at home with your home labs, like I have been for years as well, or whether you work for a partner or another vendor, or wherever you are, and you're a practicing technologist is what I like to call myself as well. Is that because we're never finished on that, and I'm sure we'll get onto that as well. But I've always been intrigued by automation, which I think is a key principle of DevOps, or from an SRE perspective. How can I automate things away? And that starts with virtualization, and you can do it in any platform. So I already had the bug, and then to get given an opportunity to go and lead evangelism technologist or whatever, raise awareness of Kubernetes backup, namely around Kasten K10. It was like starting a new job with a new team, but with the same security and the same badge that you get into work, right? It's like, although a lot of people that in this industry that have gone through acquisitions and moved jobs from company A to company B, and so it was all the good bits of that without having to go through the onboarding and without having to go through the imposter syndrome of just starting a new job. But I still very much had the imposter syndrome of, oh, this is actually a new community. Yeah, there's a few names that I know in this world that I've known for the last 10, 15 years in our virtualization, storage, infrastructure community, but there's few of us. And yeah, so there's still that imposter syndrome. But that's really the short answer to how things panned out.
Nice. And I'll just add to that as well, kind of a follow-on to that. When it comes to kind of going into these new communities, and you mentioned imposter syndrome, tell everyone a little bit about what was your approach, right? Because I know like learning in public has kind of become I shouldn't say a new thing, but a very popular thing these days. But also, you hear mixed reviews at times about certain communities. And I'm not picking on any of them. I'm just saying, like, there's some communities that are very welcoming, and there's some communities that, quite frankly, aren't. And so, how did you go about that approach?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because again, you don't know what you don't know. So you go and walk into this community, and it was very much virtual at the first instance, right? We're interacting on Tech Twitter, again, a familiar platform that I was using beforehand as well. And then you find yourself into maybe some hidden away Slack channels, and you speak. Basically, I was very much a lurker, very much a listener, whilst also getting hands-on and getting to grips with some of the talk tracks, watching a hell of a load of like YouTube videos, and getting up to speed with some of the terminology and that area. I think I was very lucky, again, from a community perspective, much like the virtualization community is very welcoming and very helpful. You're not getting like the bad vibes when you ask such a noob question. So that was good and very welcoming. And then over time, and this is exactly what I did in the virtualization community as well, is that you lurk until you've got something to say, or that you feel confident to ask a question, and then or maybe even answer a question. And then it for me, it then starts to snowball, because that whole learning in public, as you say, I feel like I've been doing that learning in public, writing blogs, delivering sessions, all of them stem from learning something new and learning a story to tell, whether it's via written format, video format, or on stage somewhere. And seeing that, like that angle as well is important. And I still have the same premise where it comes down to, if it helps one person, regardless of what you're doing, whether it's a blog post, for example, if it helps one person, it's worth doing. So you might learn and glean information from the community, but my biggest payback to that is, like, if I can help someone. And that could be just the soft skills, right? Like just talking about how and why and what it looks like to go into a different community and start listening. That might help someone. And then equally, how do I spin up my first Kubernetes cluster? Like writing a blog post and have that angle about, okay, so I know virtualization, I know VMware, for example, I know storage. How would I talk to me 3 years ago about how do I get a Kubernetes cluster really quickly without having to really know the underbelly, how do I get that up and running at home as fast as possible, or in the cloud as fast as possible, so that I can get some hands-on experience of what that actually looks like? Because I feel like that's another area that I guess want to go after, is how do I learn best with hands-on? A little bit of theory, but mostly hands-on. I want to go and create something new.
Yeah, Michael, that's super helpful. And so let's talk about the project, the 90 Days of DevOps. And I followed along at the time, by the way. You started this project January 1st, 2022, and it was 90 days, and I'll let you kind of explain a little bit about it. But also I've always wanted to ask you this. Did you have all this mapped out before you started, or did you just kind of create this as things went along? You're like, hey, I'm going to do something every day. Like, tell everyone about the project, and also tell everyone about the methodology.
Yeah, so I'll start with that, actually, because I think it's quite funny, and actually might show my true colors a little bit. So I wrote a blog on Kasten.io. There was a blog post, so you want to learn DevOps, and it got loads of traction, like more traction than any of my other blogs. I was like, this is weird, like maybe SEO is being paid for and things like that. But digging into it, it was very organic, and there was basically 12 things in there. And so I was like, okay. And I've done fitness challenges in the past, from the 1st of January to the 31st of March. It's quite a nice quarter. It's quite well rounded. It's 3 months. It's 90 days, had a ring to it, 90 days of DevOps. But to be fair, I wrote that blog post, maybe it was October, November last year. So a year ago, I wrote that. So I had that, and it was basically going through each of these topics, learn the programming language, pick one cloud, learn the fundamentals and the foundational knowledge of a cloud, because that will then enable you to go to another cloud and still have a good foundational knowledge of what that looks like there as well. Because remember, it's just compute, storage, networking. Okay, once we get that in our head, then we can start to play with everything and anything with that similar context in a way. And then, obviously, like everyone else in the world, on the 31st, I think it's the 31st of December, basically New Year's Eve, like everyone does, is I'm thinking, well, what do I start on the 1st of January? So I had the blog post, which gave me an outline of what it needs to look like. And then we're on the 31st of December, and we roll straight into it. And I think even then, the 1st is always a bank holiday in the UK. Maybe it even was a Sunday to begin with, or something silly like that. So I start these basically 90 blog posts. But the key premise is that I've seen some amazing content in the community around 100 days of cloud, 100 days of Kubernetes, 100 days of this, 100 days of that. 100 days just seems a little bit too far away, especially on one topic. I don't want to do just one thing for 100 days. I need variation. So taking that blog post, taking those 12 topics, but one on top of that being DevOps itself. Let's talk about DevOps today in 2022, and what does it mean? Like, what are the principles? What is the process? What is the responsibility of and I'm using air quotes here, you can't see me, but the responsibilities of a DevOps engineer. And that's quite a heated blog that everyone should go and read, because actually I believe that there shouldn't be a role title around DevOps engineer. DevOps engineer or DevOps should be a bit like ITIL. It's a process. It's what we should be looking to consume. Customer A DevOps requirements are potentially different to customer B. Do you all need CI? Do you all need CD? Do you need to learn a programming language? Do you need to know how to use Linux, network, etc.? Like, a DevOps engineer is quite a spurious term. Anyway, I digress a little. So the idea is that we're going to have 13 topics. So we're going to split them down over the 90 days. And it turned out around 7 days per topic, which is nice, modular way of being able to say, right, I'm going to dive into CI/CD for 7 days. I'm going to dive into Linux for 7 days. Granted, you're not going to be a Linux expert after 7 days of just getting hands-on, but it was kind of a way of getting that foundational knowledge for anyone that was either in an infrastructure position. But then I've also had developers come to me and ask, oh, this has been amazing because it gives you such a high-level overview of foundational knowledge of what it is. I think the key part to it, and one we've mentioned about the learning in public, but secondly is this just started out being my notes. Like this repository is
Sure.
just 110,000 words of my notes where I'm watching. And on each of the days, if you scroll right down to the bottom of each day, there's a list of resources and links to free blog posts, free YouTube, not that there are, well, I guess there are gated blog posts, but free YouTube videos, free content that I basically went through and learned. And maybe I took some of their spin, like if someone, Tech World with Nana, I have to give her a shout out because her content is absolutely incredible for anyone learning. She wrote a Go program that then inspired me to go and write something not similar, but it gave me the foundational knowledge by watching her to go and build my little Twitter bot that you might see every now and again on Twitter saying, oh, the PR request has been raised and it's been merged into the main branch. Just simple things like that, like make something that does something for you. So that was kind of the premise all the way through. And there's a little bit of theory, so a little bit of reading every day, but then also there's a little bit of hands-on, and that's the bit that stuck with me. And the whole reason behind it, and I think this is the most important, for me at least, was the being vulnerable. It's all really good. Like, I'm a technologist in the company, big grand title, report up into the CTO at Veeam, like all amazing stuff. But I don't know everything. None of us know everything. And every day we're going to be learning something new, or we should be, or at least we should be aspiring to keep learning. We're in that tech world. It's a constant change. So my biggest take is make yourself vulnerable, go and learn something new. Don't pretend to be an expert in anything. In fact, I'd argue that I don't want to be an expert in anything, really. There's no fun in that. But it's okay to fill those gaps. I mentioned on another podcast about, if you think about like my DevOps skills, if you like, before the 90 Days of DevOps was a bit like Swiss cheese. There was a load of holes in it. So I needed to go away and I needed to fill those holes in. Terrible analogy. I'm much better at writing and talking tech.
No, but, I like that. But, and I'll add this too. Like for me personally, I do really like, there's everything from conceptual items in there, like the OSI model, to hands-on things like Terraform and Kubernetes and Jenkins. And so all those things, people hear about these tools or these products all the time. And to your point, it gives you just a bit of a taste, right? But I'll ask you this, I mean, because it is so broad, what was like most impactful to you? I mean, obviously there was the filling in the holes, like you mentioned, but is there anything that particularly stuck out as part of the program?
So the programming language was something that I definitely wanted to get into. Now I'm no Go developer, and I chose Go over Python, and the reasons are in there because basically Kasten's written in Go, so it was a functional choice so that I can go and speak to our team and have a jaded understanding of what they're actually writing. However, if I was actually out there as an infrastructure admin looking to progress and look at that automation wheel, I would 100% be looking at how can I use Python, because Python can be used everywhere. So, and that was the first module after the DevOps overview. But the first module was definitely about programming. I think the Linux one as well. So there's a story behind that. So when I first went over to the Kasten team, I actually just wiped my laptop. I'd done a transition from Mac to Windows anyway. So I had this shiny new laptop that hadn't been out of the country because we were all in a pandemic and lockdown. So I just said, you know what? The best way to learn Linux is getting hands-on every day. Let's turn my desktop into a Linux box, a daily driver. Did that. And then a lot of that was summarized throughout the 7 days of Linux basically in there. Because I think Linux is, whether you like DevOps or not, automation or not, platform engineering, you name it, like, Linux is an important skill to have, even if you're not running it every day. Just getting hands-on, understanding how to navigate around a terminal is going to be a key skill. Everything's written in Linux, right? That's. I think they're the key areas of what stood out or where I got interested. The other one was around Jenkins. I've heard a lot about Jenkins as a CI tool. But I never used it. Like, I'm not a software developer. Why would I? So getting hands-on with that and seeing how that functions and what it does and how it brings in different other areas of that CI process, and then the biggest aha moment was, like, I made a section called CI/CD, and I think we talk about CI/CD a lot. But I also think that over the years, that CI/CD is going to be broken up, and especially if you're not a software development house, but you're going to buy off-the-shelf software from Microsoft, from XYZ vendor, you're still going to look at it from a CD point of view, a continuous deployment. Like, you might not be creating code and running it through a CI pipeline. Let the vendors do that. They're going to offload. Like, so that was a bit of an aha moment in there as well, as we were going through.
Nice. And Michael, let me ask you this, because like I said, I followed along kind of from afar on Twitter, and you kind of struck a nerve in the community, but in a good way along the way. And, it's grown to what I just checked it this week. You're over 18,000 stars on GitHub or thereabouts. When did you think this might be bigger than you anticipated?
Yeah. So bearing in mind that I started this like on a whim, wanted to use version control, so put it into GitHub, and it's basically 90 blog posts. I think it was around, and there's a graph at the bottom of the README, and you can kind of see where, and it was really that it went quite stagnant around, like, so it started growing in the thousands after about a couple of weeks, and I was like, and I remember looking at it day 26 going, oh, there's a lot here. A lot of people are watching this. I've probably got to finish it. And at that point, I knew what the straw man looked like. I knew what these 12 topics were like, but I didn't know what the title were for every day. So that was another interesting tale there. And then over the time, like, it got into a load of different communities. So it was mentioned on Reddit, and then suddenly, boom, there's a spike. And so actually it hit after the fact. So I finished on day 90. I'd just done the last section, which was storing and protected data, which was a breeze because that's kind of my daily bread and butter. Like, if I can't talk about that, no one can. And then suddenly it was like as if, he's finished. Let's now go and look at it. We've seen him talk about it for 90 days or 89 days. Now he's finished. Let's go and look at it. And that was so. Yeah, and if you look at it, there's a wavy line that just keeps on going up, which is, to me, is crazy. And I mean, for projects, like software projects on GitHub, you say about like GitHub stars being a bit of a strange number. It's not really. We shouldn't see it as a correlation to whether the project is good, bad, or ugly. But I think where we're doing this, where we're learning in public, and I looked at a couple other like roadmap type repositories, is that if it's helping these people that are starring it, then I feel like that is a little bit of validation to that. And it goes back to that original point. If it helps just one person, it was worth doing. And if you stay humble that way, then I feel like that's only going to continue that helping, that learning in public and releasing that vulnerability type that I mentioned as well.
Fair enough. So let me ask you this as kind of a final question. What's the future? What's next? Do you have plans to continue the project, create another project? Or is there anything folks are asking for, or anything you would change in hindsight? Tell everyone a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I do want to do it again, as mad as I am. And I'm also, I think it's worth mentioning, like, I'm also very lucky at Veeam that they enable me to do this. Like, a lot of this isn't talking about Veeam. In fact, the set out goal for me was to talk about anything free, free as in community free license, or open source software. I'm not talking about anything proprietary. That I wanted everyone to be able to jump on this, and to the point that I'm using free and open source tools to deploy my machines and everything around that. I'm using VirtualBox that's available on cross operating systems. I'm using Minikube a lot for the Kubernetes side of things. Obviously, Docker from a container point of view. They're all available to us. And even if you've got like a Chromebook, you've still got access to this, and you can still run through some of it or most of it. So that was a big premise of what it was. Now, rolling into 2023, I'm a little bit more prepared. He says, we're 3 months. We're just under 90 days until the end of 2022. You'll see some tweets coming out from me as well that I'm basically gearing up for the next 90 days and trying to get ahead of the curve, because writing a blog post 800 to 1,000 words a day is tough, especially now that we're back out on the road. But there is so the plan is to do a next phase. One of the things that I really missed from a topic point of view was around security. I feel like the term of the year has not been DevOps at all. It's more been around security. So DevSecOps. But I want to use the same repository because people know it. People have been to it. I've already created a logo, so we might as well continue to use that. So the plan is, and I've got kind of a straw man with maybe even a little bit more of an idea of what each day looks like, but I haven't started doing what that looks like, or I haven't started writing anything. So there is a plan. I have another plan as well that potentially after that finishes, I want to actually bring in 12 SMEs across the industries that could come and maybe write 7 days worth of their SME like topic, which I think would be quite interesting and quite inclusive of that. So I want it all in one place. The idea is to continue that learning in public, to kind of stay between the same swim lanes though. Let's incorporate security into that so that we're raising awareness of security in an automation fashion. Look at other platforms that we didn't touch on, such as serverless. Like, what does that actually mean? Like, all the cool kids are talking about it, but who's using it? Let's understand a little bit about it. Let's get hands-on. How obtainable is it? Can I run it on Minikube, for example, or could I run it locally and get hands-on with a serverless function where it sounds like it's like out of this world? So there is a plan. I don't think I don't want to put as much pressure on myself like I did last time. I don't feel like that's good for anyone, especially if you're going to have to travel and be out and about. But the idea is that just because it's 90 days, there's going to be 90 posts finished eventually. Is kind of my goal.
Sure. No, that sounds both fantastic and realistic. As it doesn't become the content death march that it may have been the first time. I completely get that. That's part of learning in public too, is how to create the content and roll out the content as well. So, Michael, that's super fantastic. And for everyone, links to 90 Days of DevOps will be in the show notes. But I know you'll be at KubeCon, I'll be at KubeCon, but is there anything else, any other places you're going to be, or how can folks reach you, or anything else you want to plug before we close out?
Yeah, so the biggest one is like, speak to me either on the repository. I'm very active on there, but also on Twitter at MichaelCade1. Yeah, between them two, you're definitely going to find me. And also, like, if you've come across it before listening to this, like, there's discussion boards about, oh, can you go and cover this? Could you do that? I'd be super, like, it'd be amazing if people could give us that feedback. Like, did it help? What are we missing? Security being one, things like secrets management, other areas that we're being told that we should know, but maybe we don't have a resource to be able to understand or know what we need to know. So yeah, all of that feedback is awesome. Whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on the actual GitHub, all of it is going to be useful as about where we go with this. But the plan is to keep it all free, in public, using version control. The other amazing thing is people have like translated this repository into different languages, which, when you think about what it is just my notes on some videos. Like, that's mind-boggling as well. But yeah, huge contribution layer. They're all welcome. A lot of people fixed a lot of my spelling and grammar mistakes, which I can only thank for that. But yeah, hit me up on Twitter or the repo.
Fantastic. All right, Michael, thank you very much for your time this week. And on behalf of Brian and myself, thanks to everyone for listening this week. We certainly appreciate it. And if you enjoy the show, please tell us a friend. Please leave us a review. And to close out, thank you very much for your time this week, and we will talk to everyone next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.